All right, let's dive into some seriously dark history.
Love it.
We're talking about Vlad the Impaler.
Oh, yeah.
The guy behind the Dracula legend.
A real prince turned into a monster of myth.
Our listeners are fascinated by the truly terrifying, and they want to know the truth.
Of course, everyone wants to separate fact from fiction.
Exactly. So we're going to dig into how a 15th century ruler became this, supernatural vampire figure.
Right.
Brutal executions.
Oh, yeah.
The Order of the Dragon, whispers of blood drinking. All leading up to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
It's like we're tracing the bloodline.
Literally.
From a prince to the king of the vampires.
Okay, so let's start with that name.
Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, pretty chilling.
Not just a nickname.
I mean, that was his favorite way to execute people.
Impalement.
Impalement.
Thanks.
And not just a few cases here and there.
Right.
We're talking about forests of impaled bodies.
Oh, wow.
A truly terrifying sight meant to break his enemies.
Wow.
Just imagine that. I mean, it's hard to even comprehend that kind of brutality.
It was psychological warfare.
Oh, yeah.
Vlad knew the power of fear.
I bet.
The sheer terror of those impaled forests would have spread like wildfire.
Right.
Resistance was almost unthinkable.
So even back then, he was building a reputation.
Oh, absolutely. A reputation that would last for centuries.
A reputation directly tied to Dracula.
A powerful, fearsome figure.
Commanding both fear and respect.
Exactly.
Okay, now there's also this connection to the Order of the Dragon.
Ah, yeah.
That sounds, I don't know, mysterious.
Mysterious, but real.
Real?
The Order of the Dragon was a chivalric order.
Okay.
And Vlad III's father, Vlad II, he was a member.
Interesting.
This symbol, a dragon.
Of course.
That's where the name Dracul comes from.
So Dracul means dragon.
Yes.
But how has that become a vampire thing?
Over time, Dracul also came to mean devil in Romanian. So Vlad III, the son of Dracul, inherited a legacy tied to both power.
The dragon and evil.
A fascinating duality.
Like vampires.
You often see that in vampire lore.
The name itself foreshadows that blend of strength and darkness.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then there are those rumors about Vlad and blood.
Blood drinking.
Yeah, dipping his bread in the blood of his enemies.
Oh.
Seriously disturbing.
We have to be careful here.
Is there any truth to that?
There's no solid evidence to back it up.
Figure.
Probably one of those exaggerated stories.
Right.
Part of building that legend.
Yeah, but the fact that people told those stories at all
says a lot.
Right. It's like each rumor, true or not, added to his terrifying image.
Exactly. Shows how easily stories, especially dark ones, get amplified and distorted over time.
Totally.
Blurs the line between fact and fiction.
Speaking of fiction, how did Bram Stoker turn Vlad
into Dracula?
Yeah, into the iconic vampire.
He didn't just copy the whole story.
Right.
Vlad and his reputation inspired Stoker, for sure.
Right.
But Dracula is more of a composite character.
Okay. He drew from all sorts of Eastern European folklore.
About vampires.
Yeah, think of creatures like the Strigoi or Moroi, undead beings that prey on the living.
Creepy.
So Stoker took Vlad's historical persona, mixed it with existing vampire mythology.
Okay.
Created something new but still rooted in our fears.
Clever.
He took creative liberties, blended history with imagination.
Like an artist using a real person for inspiration?
Yes, exactly.
Adds their own style.
Exactly.
We talked about impalement, but...
What else?
What other acts of cruelty are linked to Vlad?
Oh, there were plenty.
Besides impalement.
Vlad's cruelty went way beyond impalement. He was known to burn people alive.
Oh, my God.
Gruesome mutilations.
Jeez.
Forced people to build Panari Castle.
Oh, wow.
Under horrific conditions.
It's just grim.
It really is a grim picture of his reign.
Yeah. Was he just a sadist? Or was there a purpose to this cruelty?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Leads us to another interesting point.
Propaganda.
Someone was trying to make Vlad look bad.
Well, it's possible.
Real?
Many of the worst stories about Vlad spread through those early printed books.
Okay.
Especially in the German-speaking world.
Interesting.
And those books often had woodcuts.
Oh, right.
Depicting all the horrors.
Wow.
Really cemented his image as a villain.
So they were using the printing press to kind of...
shape public opinion.
Yeah, shape public opinion.
Turn Vlad into the bad guy.
Right, for their own reasons.
Exactly, and we have to think about those reasons.
Yeah, what were they trying to achieve?
Well, remember Vlad and the Transylvanian Saxons?
Oh, right. They didn't get along.
Not at all. They were constantly clashing.
So maybe these stories, they weren't totally made up.
Right.
But they were exaggerated.
Maybe even fabricated.
To make Vlad look worse.
Demonize him.
Justify.
Taking action against him.
Wow. So history is rarely objective.
Rarely.
It's written by the winners.
Or at least by those in power.
Makes you think you really have to dig deep.
Absolutely.
Look beyond the surface.
Question your sources.
Be aware of bias.
Because history is never just black and white.
Right. So we've got Vlad the Impaler.
A brutal prince.
But how much of what we know is true?
That's the question.
Yeah, how much is real and how much is exaggerated?
Almost impossible to say, for sure.
After all these centuries.
Centuries of stories and legends.
But one thing's for certain.
What's that?
Vlad the Impaler.
Yes.
He created the perfect breeding ground for Dracula.
For the Dracula myth, yes.
His actions and the stories.
All contributed to this mythical figure.
The brutality, the dragon, the devil.
The whispers of blood drinking.
All of it.
It all played a part.
And then Bram Stoker came along.
And gave us Dracula.
An iconic vampire.
Embodiment of those same qualities.
Power, darkness, the thirst for blood.
Exactly.
Like Vlad laid the foundation.
The groundwork.
And Stoker built this gothic castle on top of it.
A castle of horror.
But Dracula's bigger than just a book.
Oh, much bigger.
He's a cultural icon.
He haunts our imagination.
Why Vlad, out of all the brutal figures in history?
Why did he spark this enduring myth?
It's a good question.
Vlad resided on that edge.
Reality
and myth.
Right.
His brutality was extreme.
For any time.
Even for his time.
So people were ready to believe anything.
The more outlandish, the better.
The stories that hinted at something
Imagine.
Beyond human.
Exactly.
The truth itself was so terrifying.
So terrifying.
That it needed a supernatural explanation.
It's like, how else could you explain it?
Right. And then there's the symbolism.
Oh, yes.
The dragon.
The dragon. A creature of power and myth.
Transforming into the devil.
Embodiment of evil.
And that duality.
It plays into our fascination with vampires.
Creatures who are both alluring and terrifying.
Powerful and predatory.
It's like Vlad tapped into something primal.
In the human psyche.
Our fear of the dark.
Of the unknown.
The predator in the shadows.
That fear is powerful.
And it's resilient.
It keeps coming back.
In books, films, TV shows.
The legend of Dracula endures.
The shadow of Vlad the Impaler lingers.
It does.
So we've gone from Vlad the Impaler,
the historical figure,
to Dracula,
the mythical vampire.
It's chilling to see how history inspires horror.
And how that horror can last for centuries.
But here's a final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Would Dracula even exist without Vlad?
That's the question.
Would the vampire myth be so powerful?
Without that seed of truth?
Without a real person?
Whose darkness reflected the monster in our minds.
It really makes you think.
Yeah, how history and myth kind of create these figures.
That we're still fascinated by.
And frightened by, centuries later.
Exactly.
It speaks to that fascination we have.
With the dark side.
Yeah, the dark side of human nature.
Our desire to understand where evil comes from.
And maybe
a part of us that sees
the monster in ourselves.
Vlad the Impaler.
A prince who used terror as a weapon.
Who was just cruel.
To get what he wanted.
And in doing so,
he accidentally created a myth.
That's outlived him by centuries.
Exactly, the myth of the vampire.
It's still evolving.
Dracula is more than just a character in a book.
He's an archetype. A symbol of our fears.
And our fascinations.
Dracula's been in so many
books, films, TV shows.
Each one adds another layer to the myth.
Reflecting whatever people are afraid of at the time.
From the classic Gothic horror.
To these modern vampires.
Who are almost romantic.
Yeah, the Byronic vampires.
They all reflect how we think about evil.
How our relationship with darkness.
Inner and outer darkness.
Changes over time.
It's like Vlad gave us a canvas.
And we just keep painting our fears on it.
That's his real legacy.
Not that he was a real vampire.
But that he inspired.
The idea of the vampire.
The monster that still haunts our imagination.
Reminding us that the line between history and myth.
Between reality and nightmare.
It's blurry.
This has been a deep dive.
Into the heart of darkness.
From Vlad the Impaler.
A brutal prince who ruled through fear.
And Dracula.
The legendary vampire.
It's a story that shows us.
Sometimes the most terrifying monsters.
Are the ones who walk among us.
The ones whose stories blend fact and fiction.
Leaving us to wonder about
the true nature of evil.
And the shadows
that lurk within us all.